Hi, I am Jacob Wagner. In this video, I'm going to show you how to work with text in the Cloners+Effectors plugin. In this scene, I have a text layer. What I would like to do is to put it into the cloner system so that I can animate all the letters separately. If I select the text layer and just click Add Cloner, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone the entire text layer itself. And I can adjust all the parameters just as with any cloner system. This is probably not what you want. So let's undo that. What we want right now is we want every letter on its own separate layer first. So before we put it into the cloner system, we need every letter in the word to be on its own layer. And that, of course, can take a little bit of work to do. So what I've created is a small companion plugin called Cloners Text Split. The only purpose of this plugin is to split apart the text field so that it's easy to get it into the cloner system. It's pretty straightforward. You set the anchor point where you want. In this case, we will set it right at the center. And then you click Split It. Then we have two toggles down here. You can turn them on or off. The first one we're just going to turn on. I'm going to explain what that does in a little bit. And I'm going to leave the second one off right now, just to explain what it actually does. And I'm going to put the anchor point in the center and click Split It. When I do that, I get every letter on its own layer. So if I select all of them, maybe zoom in a little bit, the anchor point is positioned in the center of each letter. This is of course cool, but it does introduce a problem. If I was to scale down all these letters, either manually or with the cloner system, let's try to do that. You can see that they don't scale around the same axis vertically. So let's undo that. This is because the anchor point on the A is higher up than it is on the W. Naturally, because the A is taller than the W. So I'm gonna delete all of this again and switch on the text layer. And this time, before I split it apart, I'm going to toggle this align vertical. When I turn that on, the plugin is going to determine what is the X height. So the X height is the height of the W and the E, for instance. So with this marked, and we click Split It, and let's select all of them, we can see that now the anchor point is in the center of the W, but on the A, it's moved down a little bit so that it's the same vertical position with all the letters. This means that when we scale this down, they're going to scale down on the same horizontal line, which is just what we want. I'm actually going to delete those again because I want the registration points to be, in this case, down at the bottom, at the baseline of the text. So I select this one, which is the baseline of the text, and click Split It. So to get it into the cloner system, all I need to do is to select all of them and click Add Cloner. I'm just going to zoom out again. As you can see, we now get the first 5 letters here. That is because we are creating a linear cloner with 5 clones in it. Let's set this to 8 instead. And we got the correct number of letters. Now when we have the text in a linear cloner, we can use the linear cloner as we usually do by using the properties on the cloner. So we can change the distribution of the letters using this, for instance. And one thing you'll notice is that it doesn't actually behave like the linear cloner normally would. Normally the linear cloner would position every clone with exactly the same distance. But because we have been using this plugin to split the text apart. And because we had this respect kerning turned on while doing it, it has stored the kerning information into each letter. So now the linear cloner can position the letters correctly compared to each other. If we want to have exactly the same result as we had before we split this text apart, we need to select the cluster cloner instead. That is going to give us exactly the same result as the original text field, but the cluster cloner actually have no settings at all. So we can't change anything. We are just going to get exactly the same result. This is of course cool because now we can start adding effectors to it. Maybe a plane effector with a linear fall off and a quadratic curve that changes the position and the opacity. Let's make it a little wider and set opacity to -100. And let's set the position X up a little bit too. So now we can animate the text like that. And of course, everything else we've done in all the other videos with effectors, we can do all the same things with this text now. One other thing that sometimes can be fun with text is to put it in a circle. We can do that with the radio cloner. So by selecting the radio cloner, we're now going to get this distributed in a circle. And we can change the radius, of course, of the circle. Or we can change the start angle and end angle. Maybe we want to change the offset a little bit so we get it up to something like this. And everything is still going to work, so we still have our effector here essentially working exactly the same way in this case. The last thing I want to show you is a little trick you can use. And I'm calling it a trick because it's not really a feature, it's more a dirty trick, I would say. If you look at the kerning between these letters now, they're not very good anymore. And that's because when you put text in a circle, you always need to adjust the kerning because the kerning is really created to handle texts that are organized in a linear row as text normally is. In this case, we can see the space between the W and the E is much larger than the space between the E and the S. We want to level that out, and we could do that by selecting the clone itself, which is something that we normally never would do. And we can see that it has a lot of weird settings. Those settings are something that the old cloner system used to even function. And you're not supposed to mess with those under normal circumstances. But there is one case where you might would, and that is when working with this text. At the top, it has this kerning value. And that's a kerning value that has been stored when splitting the text apart. We can adjust this a little bit. So if you drag this, you're going to drag the letter around in the circle. So I'm going to undo this. Most cases, you only want to adjust it a little bit. So you want to hold down Command on Mac or Control on PC. And you can now drag this ever so slightly to get the kerning just right. Whatever you do, do not mess around with all the other stuff. You're not supposed to do that, but you can adjust the kerning settings here. So that was a quick demonstration of how to work with the text splitter and how to work with text inside the cloner system in general. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.